Okay, so I'm gonna get started. You guys aren't here yet, but for the playback, I have to get started because I can't just sit here all day waiting for people. So let's start with Greta's. I believe Greta has 2 versions and she wanted me to focus on this one, so we'll do just that. We'll just real quickly go over this one, and in terms of direction, I think the perspective is doing a lot better. It makes a lot more sense for this, but if you do want Power to stand out a little bit more, I would suggest you maybe make her a little bit bigger so that you have a better kind of focal point of this piece, because right now she does feel a little bit kind of drowned out into the piece. So if anything, I would make her say about this much bigger at least. Oops. Just pretend that is very nicely cleaned up. And you can see how just increasing the size makes her feel a lot more like she's the focal point and a little bit more important to us as a viewer, compared to this where she kind of sinks into the background and you can just feel like she kind of gets lost. You don't really have a place for your eyes to kind of focus on, which I guess if you are trying to create that sense of mood or that kind of feeling, go ahead. But just compositionally wise, for good kind of composition, you do want to make sure you have one focal point. And then in terms of lighting, I think you just need to bump up some of that bounce light coming off from the store just to kind of highlight her character a little bit more and give a greater sense of direction of where all the light source is, and it'll make a little bit more sense for us as a viewer. Okay, so let's focus on the harder one, which is the perspective. For sure, yes, you have gotten the perspective down, but one glaring mistake that I'm already seeing right now, can you guess what it is? It has to do with Power herself and not the background. It is her head. You haven't realized it, but her head actually is a little bit small for this perspective. Since we are looking at it from top down, her head actually needs to be like a tad bit bigger, so it seems like it's closer to us in the camera. Since the camera lens will kind of foreshorten the whole perspective. So see how this feels a lot closer to the camera versus this, where it's kind of something feels off. So you do need to make her head a little bit bigger, and you need to tuck it up a little bit so her neck is kind of hiding, because if you look at it from top down, your head does hide a bit of your neck. So let me cut that out. Hello, Greta. We're starting with yours. No worries, but I just did mention that your head is like way too small, because if you look at it compared this to this feels like she's actually poking out towards the camera, whereas the original version, it just feels like something is a little off, like she's like a midget or something like that. So we do have to make her head a little bit bigger so it feels like the perspective is correct. And then in that case, we'll just extend that canvas just a little bit so we don't feel too kind of shrunken in, too claustrophobic. Yes. So that's what we just edited. And then I think in terms of lighting, you will want to decide whether you want it to be a very dim kind of cafe. So say this whole background is going to be, I don't know, some kind of dark. like we end up with this darkness and then we have the light source coming from this way, then it would make sense why power is so dark. Let's maybe lighten that up a little bit. And then maybe the only source of light, work with me. Only source of light would be, I don't know, the counter where the ice cream is kind of glowing. So it's kind of like your late night. Right, you can put your little neon 24 hours and then you have your little menus glowing in the dark. Let me get rid of this stuff so it's not bothering me so much. I caught another cold over the weekend, so I'm still sort of recovering, but it's a lot better compared to when I was recording the Patreon tutorial, so you'll hear the distinct voice difference. Alright, let me make this better. Delete that. So we can have the light source kind of pouring in from the outside, sort of like giving you multiple sources of light. So that way it feels very interesting for us as viewers and gives you a chance to kind of get those kinds of silhouettes. Oh my gosh, what even is that? Oh. Oh. And then these signs are like your opportunity to kind of add pops of color. So I would suggest for this color palette, we're going to stick to kind of purples, blues, cyan, and maybe some of your muted kind of pinks rather than a red. So instead of this red right here for power, I would suggest you push that a little bit cooler. That way you have a more unified palette, because you tend to not to want to kind of bring too many contrasting colors into a palette. Your cyan would be your like kind of really bright pop of color, and then maybe a magenta color would be that extra pop of color. So just like that. See how that fits a little bit better into the color palette that we have already. I'm just also going to shift everything over slightly more purple. You can really quickly do that using your hue and saturation filter adjustment. I'm also going to push some of the shadows a little bit more purple. Okay, just pretend that's the same color. I'm too lazy to go back and fix it. Oh, multiply. Okay, going back to some of those pops of colors. Maybe this sign right here is that cyan color. And then maybe have some pops of that pink here and there, but not too much. Yeah. Hold a sec. Let's look up some quick pictures of dark indoor cafes. All right, let me bust this over here so you can see what I'm looking at. And so basically what I am imagining is some kind of lighting scenario, perhaps similar to something like this, where it's pretty dark, but you have a little bit of light. Honestly, it's almost, in my head, I'm imagining it sort of like it's basically a closed cafe, but she's just broken and she stole some ice cream. Bar lighting. Yeah. I feel like it wouldn't be suitable for this one. It's too bright, and you really wouldn't get these really cool lighting scenarios. Something even like this. Oh, go back. Okay, just for inspo. And then I'm gonna bust out a layer so we can add some of those residual outside light. So give me my marquee tool. Hard light. I'm trying to keep it pretty subtle so we don't overwhelm with too much of that light source everywhere. I would probably put like a door there or something so you have a little bit of darkness. And then real quickly, let's just do like some light on Power herself so it feels like it makes sense. Overlay maybe? So not a perfect direct light source because we're pretending that she is, you know, standing in front of this window, so there's that kind of windowsill being blocking off. I gotta erase a little bit of the shadow. And so Power probably has to get a little bit brighter. if we are committing to this light source. Yeah, so you can see just how this extra addition of light helps you add some more interesting silhouettes to her figure, and so it's not super boring, just like your typical lighting source. And obviously you would want to add a lot more color, so looking at your inspo, I would say maybe your opportunities of adding color, yeah, would be with the ice cream, the menu, and like even, I don't know if you would put a character here, just because this is like, we're simulating sort of a closed down ice cream parlor shop cafe thing. If you do add like a character, maybe it's like someone sneaking behind being like, who the heck is in here that's not supposed to be here. Yeah, like I would imagine if it's closed, she broke in and the window's kind of broken and there's pieces of glass. Yeah. Another option you can go with this is, let's close that. Let me duplicate this real quick. Another option you can go for is you just make everything a lot brighter. So duplicate layer. I would make, let's see if I can do this like this. I would just make the lighting on power a lot brighter. And I still gotta shift this more towards purples. These shadows right here, I would totally suggest you push the colors in them. Considering that a lot of your inspo so far has been those very saturated artists, the shadows tend to be a lot more saturated, whereas the lights are desaturated. So you do want to push yourself to be a little bit more saturated in those. Okay. And they use saturation as a way to produce contrast rather than like value. Okay, so maybe something this bright and then you add some shadows. Maybe not that dark. Hello, hello, welcome. We're just critiquing Greta's work right now. And then I would say, Greta, you do want to change the color of the wall because gray is not a very flattering color in this color palette. I would maybe push it a little bit more slightly towards mint green. So maybe... Hello, Jesse. Nice to see you. Oh my gosh, this ain't working for me. Yes, I never use white either because white is like really hard for you to judge color. Like if you see when I open up like a new picture, it's like a slightly more gray color. So that way I can always judge my colors a little bit more easily rather than white because everything is obviously gonna not look bright enough. So for sure, we're just going to maybe pop that into minty color, and then if you want to get darker, just push it towards your blues. Maybe less gray and slightly lighter. That way you get that sense of the color palette that your artists typically use. And then I'm going to refrain from using white just yet. I'm going to go into my yellows for that signage right here. I would caution this right here though. I feel like maybe make one of the signs a little bit bigger so it doesn't feel so perfect. Right now it seems too even. Or even make it a little taller. Okay, I can do this. Yeah, like something like that. Yeah, they're too close in size. If they're too similar in size, it feels like something is wrong or it feels too boring for us as an audience. And then since these shelves are like pink, you can totally use a purple or something for shadow. I would avoid using grays because again, we said shadows, according to the artist that you like, they tend to use very saturated colors for shadows and then less saturated for the lights. So we're gonna follow that rule. Your shadow's gonna be saturated, your lights are gonna be desaturated, okay? We're also gonna probably help you fix up your shadows. Her jacket isn't as wrinkled as you would think it is. So I would simplify some of these shadows so you don't get too overwhelmed with them. And then make sure with wrinkles, they come out. They don't just stay inside. Wrinkles still wrap around the form of the jacket. See? So you'll do want to pop all of those wrinkles outwards so that we make sense. I should be an art teacher. Well, I'm currently working part-time as like a art teacher for kids and everything, so you are not wrong. I also host this crit stream for my disciples, so technically I am still an art teacher. Oh, just like pretend that does not exist. Let's see if I can somehow tuck her head to the right place. There. Okay, so I'm gonna have her neck sit right there. So I'm gonna create a slight shadow. And have her shirt wrap around like this so it feels like it's part of her body. Boop. Collar comes out a little bit. Or we can have it like this, tucked underneath like that. Yeah. So you see how that helps her head read better? Because if we look at my head from like top down, I hide a little bit of my neck, right? So that's why we're pushing her neck a little bit farther back. And then I'm gonna add a slight tinge of color to your shirt so it feels a lot brighter. Since we've decided we want a really bright light source. And then for sure, power's gonna have to get brighter. You like both versions? Dang, you gotta choose what story you're trying to tell then, Greta, or else it's gonna take you forever to finish this piece. Maybe choose the piece that seems a little bit easier for you to do right as of right now, so you can finish it and then you can feel accomplished. That way you feel motivated enough to do, you know, a second piece. I don't know if you guys have seen my latest post with the Miles Morales fan art. I feel like people are overreacting a little bit too much with the fighting and everything. I did not even think of yeah, you can always come back in 6 months. Yeah, I don't know. It was just so funny to me. I'm like, what the heck are people doing? They're off their rockers, man. Everything became political these days. Let me give her some eyebrows because she's looking quite bare. Yeah, how divisive. Honestly, people are like arguing, like, oh, you just never seen it, the lighting. Oh no, you don't know, blah blah blah. And how do these people have the time of their day to sit and actually respond back to it like an internet comment? That just seems like such a 14-year-old thing to do. And I thank everyone who send me messages saying like, oh, don't worry about them. Like, yeah, for sure. I don't on it at this point. I kind of internet kind of desensitized. Yeah, I think it's a lot of the younger people who are like kind of trying to be social justice warriors a little bit. Which I get, it is a sensitive topic, that whole idea of like whitewashing, but sometimes they just, you know, you just gotta, if it doesn't work vibe with you, you just gotta move on. Chronically online, you're right. The new generation is always online. There's no such thing as like staying passive. Everything has to have like some kind of hidden meaning. Like I can't just choose a color palette because it looks nice and it feels like a certain mood. It has to be because I intentionally wanted to whitewash a character who's belovedly a person of color. And then, like I mentioned to Jesse last month, I think, the eyes have to have a little bit more, actually not Jesse, Misu, because his Makima picture, his piece, had not enough shadow in the eyeballs, so the eyeballs tend to look a little bit less realistic. The eyelid casts a slight shadow on top of the eyeball, so you can't give me ghost looking eyes or else I'm gonna think you're possessed or something. See, that addition shadow makes it feel a lot more believable, realistic. And then because I forgot, because her head is over there, we gotta push the neck back like this. We're just gonna look like a whack, like it's disconnected. And then I'm just gonna give her some slight under eye bags so it feels like it's a 3D structure and not just flat objects on her face. Yeah, honestly, because we unified the color palette a little bit, Greta, because we decided we would use a lot more of those blues and the purples that your line art is. So now it kind of looks like it makes sense. So if you do want to keep it, you can totally keep it. It's sort of how like, I think Loish, the artist, she does her line art a little bit. She usually sketches in like black and then she later locks it and then changes it to a color that matches the drawing, the color palette that she uses. That way it creates a very kind of sketchy but very semi-realistic kind of vibe. I might even bring some of this blue in here. Right, so it looks like it feels okay to have that blue in there. I'm gonna give her some more bangs because whew. And then for the lighting up here, make sure this part is the brightest section, so I'm thinking the light source might be a slightly warmer color since this is like that green color and this is blue. Yeah, maybe something like that. And then in this case, we're gonna get rid of this side light source. We're gonna change it to top down. Strawberry blonde, you are absolutely correct. I live for the strawberry blonde colors. It's such a pretty hair color, honestly. I considered like dyeing my hair that color, but then I realized it's like really pretty harmful since I'd have to go like pure bleach. So that's why I went for like a more darker brown blonde this time. Then we do a little bit of shadow so it doesn't feel like her shirt's the same color as her. Yeah, bleach is so bad. It's also expensive. Alright, let's make sure we get some of the other shadows so we're not just sitting crazy. The blue hair. I feel like Jesse has an obsession with drawing characters with like anime blue hair. Pretty sure he's like super inspired by like cyberpunk and stuff. That's fair. I think after periods of time where I go blonde, I like decide I just want my natural hair color back, so I just leave it alone. And I think I'm getting there. My roots are starting to come out. I'm not banking on you for liking that color, Jesse. I'm just saying. It's become your signature style. Okay, my favorite part is the hands, so I gotta make sure I respect that finger. I do have to question why her feet look like this though. It feels like you cropped off a little bit too much of her foot, so I'm gonna how do I do this? Her feet should be like that sized. I can't imagine Greta with her emo hair. Where is it? Okay, we're gonna finish this off. Layer via copy. We're gonna shrink her size of her foot and fix up the shape of the foot, because the foot, if you didn't realize, let me make it bigger. It forms this shape, so your big toe, right? So her foot should not look like a super long baguette, but a little bit shorter and a little bit more defined. Give that toe. Let's see. Well, I don't know how everyone has been, but it's been a slow month for me. It's finally getting hotter, so that is great, but getting sick in June was not part of my plan, so hopefully next month is better. Oh yeah, poor Misu, gosh. I just hope he gets his tablet back, or he can, you know, submit traditional works and we can talk about traditional techniques and how you can apply it to digital art too. So before, long baguettes, reasonable feet. I can imagine the move over to Japan might be a little bit rough just because it's basically international because he was from the UK and Germany. And having to deal with like moving stuff via like shipping companies. Ugh. I hate even moving like using a car, so I imagine having to move using those companies that are like super slow on response and everything. Oh, sorry, yeah, the UK is different. Just being the filthy American that I am, my geography is like disgustingly absent. I barely even know the state's locations. Like, I only know about the West Coast and maybe a little bit of like approximately some of the East Coast, not really. can't blame me, gotta blame my teachers. They did me dirty. Maybe make this a slightly bit brighter. I would probably not have that. So much of the shadows over there. The only bright light source I could potentially maybe be convinced you'd have is from the ice cream, but that's like super far away, so even then it's like pretty subtle. The heck? Oh. Alright, quick color blush so we're not super dead. Give her lips a little bit of color. And I'm gonna bust out an overlay just to give this a little bit of color too. Ooh. Cycling does sound fun, Jesse, but Texas seems way too hot for that. I don't know how you're managing to survive. Okay, and then let's see how else we can break up some of the shapes here. I would say maybe we add a little bit of shadow underneath here for the counter. Maybe some table right here. So we're not looking too boring. Oops. That way you can also add another shadow right there. Maybe you can make the signpost right here a little bit, some big signpost right here. I don't know, it's a really shitty signpost, but just pretend it works. You can make a huge ass logo right here for the ice cream or the drink. Here's your chance to use some of those pinks in there. Or I don't know, some kind of combination colors. Just to fill up the space so it's not so empty. And then never forget that extra little glow right here, so then it really feels like the light is working with you. So those are two directions you can take this piece. Obviously I'm not going to finish up rendering everything, so you can do it like it's after dark and power has broken in and you are trying to catch her. If you do want that extra kind of, I don't know, pop of light in here, you can make it so there's an employee right here, employee right here, and they're, you know, turn on the lights and stuff. Title wallpaper. You could totally take inspiration from there if you want, from Animal Crossing, or you could do something a little bit brighter, much cuter in that sense. So I will keep this PSD for you to peruse in your own time, and then we're gonna go on to we'll go on to Jesse's right now. Okay, so Jesse, I think that these two ideas are great on its own. So for a more unique, if you want something more unique, I would say this one is definitely more interesting as an idea, but I do have some qualms with it. So we're going to shoop. Okay. Yeah. I will be saving this as a PSD, so you can dissect all the layers that I've haphazardly added and not labeled. So you can try to figure out which layer is which layer, okay? Okay, so first things first, I would say you do want to maybe make this hand a little closer to us as the camera, because if we're looking at, when you're taking a picture, let me pull out my camera. So if I'm looking at my picture, farther away the image is going to get a little smaller, and when it's super close it kind of feels a little too weird. So I would just pull it back a little bit. So the image will actually be smaller, because it looks like from this perspective, right? Like it was how I pulled it really far away from me. So layer via copy. We're gonna expand that a little bit. See how that makes more sense now? And I'm just gonna tilt it a little bit so we're not looking at it straight on. So before, kind of a little whack, like this camera lens is like wide lens or something like that, and then to something a little bit more believable. And then you can, and then I would highly suggest you find a reference picture of how a phone, like a smartphone, looks like, because right now it feels like it's reading a little bit more like an iPad or a smart notebook because it's so wide. So let's see if we can do something about this. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to separate the hand and the phone so that I'm not struggling to not mess up your work. Yeah, it does look like a tablet, but I mean, if guess of it, it could be a tablet, but I've never seen someone hold a tablet like this. Like, a tablet's so big that typically you have to use two hands, right? So only a phone would typically be used with one hand. Okay, cut that out. And I'm also gonna separate this part and the image so we can shrink that canvas size a little bit. So a phone would typically be about this size, and then maybe what you can do, okay, how to, big hands. Okay, but even with big hands, I've literally never seen anyone opt to choose to use one hand to hold the tablet. That's like the major biggest flex you could ever get for a 21st century person. Okay, and then tilt it so it's straight on. So we're gonna have to do a little bit of cover-upsies. Bye-bye, Greta. Yeah, it'll just be me roasting the rest of Jesse's proportions today. And I did save Misu's things, but he's not here, so it is not as productive. Oof. Okay, did I accidentally... Oh, did I just do that? That's why you don't talk and draw, guys. Cover that up. Woohoo! What is that weird? Okay, cover that up. I would also potentially choose a different wall color because gray is never a very flattering color because it drowns out everything, especially unless it's like a piece that's intentionally meant to be very moody, very dramatic. So I would push a little bit of warmth to it. Let's see. Just ever so slightly. And you can see how that kind of changes the whole tone a little bit. Sort of like you put like some kind of IG filter on it. And I'm gonna do the same thing for your table. Get rid of that shadow, make it so she is casting that shadow. I'm not even gonna, I haven't even talked about the shadow of the objects on the table yet, but let's keep doing our cover-ups first. We've got to finish up the cover-ups, then we'll discuss. Okay, so your picture's there. Okay, just pretend that's good enough. And then I do notice that you are doing a lot better with hands, though there's still a lot to be worked on. In regards to, you need a little bit more shadow so your hands will read a little bit more clearly. So don't be afraid to add a little bit more shadow. Even just a little bit like that is fine. And then, let's see, how do we hold our phones? Yes, this is a work in progress, yeah. So for sure, I just want to give you a little reminder to get those shadows in the hands. And then I'm going to push down the hand here because I'm looking at it how I hold my camera. And my hand is kind of lined up like this with my thumb. With a little bit more over here. So maybe something like this. That's how I would typically hold my camera. So yeah, this has become another hand stream. Well, I like drawing hands, so that's what this is gonna be all about. Make sure your thumb's not too skinny. Darken up that shadow a little bit. All right, so I would fix the hand like this. Take a look at like how you would hold your phone to make sure that the angles and it makes sense for how you're holding it. And then when you're looking at a phone, depending on whether you have like a Samsung or like an iPhone, it can vary the type of borders and the types of the placements of the camera, but I would say you do want to make this a little bit straighter. For iPhones, they're gonna have like curved edges. So I don't know if you have an iPhone or if you have an Android, just take a look at your own phone as like reference. And then more oftentimes than not, I do believe this type of phone style was from like iPhone 6, maybe 7. So if you are trying to be a little bit more modern, I would axe that. Bring it down. Because no one takes picture using the home button anymore, and it's just going to be the camera. So black, and then you have your white button right here. With the filters or whatever, real quick, let's show you a little bit, okay? iPhone camera. App, is that what I'm looking for? Yeah, see? So it gonna look like this. It's all touchscreen. It's all touchscreen. Exactly. So we definitely have to get rid of that extra button because iPhones apparently nowadays think it's not cool to have a button anymore. So let me shrink this size a little bit so we can see. So let's make sure we get that nice camera border. It's your age is showing by the fact that you just forgot that we don't have buttons on iPhones anymore. And then I don't know, you can add all the little details that you want. Perhaps, perchance, you could change the color of the phone case. So a quick way to try out some colors, I would brighten it up a little bit. Maybe we'll do some kind of cyan color. To kind of mimic the green that you have in the little picture. Not too saturated because then it'll take all the attention away from the character. But you can see how this color is significantly better than the brown that we use, because the brown is really like, it's drown, it's drown, it's giving me like, it's boring vibes. And then we don't forget the little highlights that you have for the phones and stuff, whatnot. I'll let you deal with that later. Okay. And then in terms of the shadows of the figure, the seat needs that shadow. That's your phone case? Wow. Wowzer. So you can totally input your own like personal little touch, artistic touch, like your own personal life into your artwork, and that makes things a little bit more personal, makes things a little bit more interesting. So sometimes I like to put like my favorite colors, which are like this phone case, this colors. It's like this cyan, green, pinkish, peachish color into my pictures for the phone cases and stuff. And I mean, you remember that one piece where I inputted like the pictures of my stickers on the laptop. So that's another way to make things a little bit more interesting. Okay, so we need some shadows in this seat because it's very flat right now. So I would say the shadows, we're gonna go slightly towards the magenta-ish, and I keep it relatively saturated. Maybe I'll keep it to red. I'm still not very happy with this background color, so potentially And slightly better. Yes, we gotta change this too. And I'm gonna say that in the camera, they put a filter or whatnot, so everything's gonna look brighter, more vibrant. And then shift that baby. No. We're gonna keep it in the warm shadows. Okay, let's play around with the colors a little bit, because gray is never our best friend. So I'm gonna say if we want to do this pink cyan, we can do some kinds of blues. So I'm gonna bump the blues if I can potentially get to a blue that I like. And then maybe put like a, I don't know, some kind of tablecloth cover. I'm essentially basically making the table kind of a little bit more contrasty, so this table is reflecting a lot more light, so that way you get a little bit more silhouette in the picture, so it's not so boring. And then maybe we can do a little bit, I don't know, checker lines. For the piece right here, so it doesn't look so monotone, monochrome, yes, monochrome. And then I'm gonna change this shadow color actually. There we go. Bring the hand a little bit darker. And that's how you get that really nice kind of glow from the warm sun. I may potentially make this even darker because I want to make it seem as though she is backlit. Oops. Then we gotta fix this color right here. Do. Oops. Those hands. I think these hands are looking really good. You just need to fix this hand right here. Alright, and then just some final touches is I'm gonna fix up the color of this part. Make it a little bit more of that color maybe. And then you're just going to add your rim glows real nice. Take a slightly yellow orangey kind of color. Maybe bring it down a little bit. Use that just to finish up some some of the pieces here. Glow here too. And that's your really quick way to cheat and make it things look a little bit more finished than it is. Now, in regards to the characters themselves, I think the proportions are looking okay, but the eyes are giving me a little bit of concern. Please make sure you check up on the eyes a little bit. Even though they're kind of like half closed, they still come down like an almond shape slightly. And they're gonna line up. And I never want to see eyebrows like this ever again, because it reminds me so much of people when they tattoo their eyebrows. So blur out the fronts of the eyebrows so it feels a lot more natural. So you can just take a soft brush. Really quickly just blend out the eyebrows like that. Okay? Give these girls their just duties. Their eyebrows deserve a lot more care than that. And then give her cut crease a little bit more attention. Make sure it's wrapping around her actual eye socket and not just sitting there. Clean up that highlight. If her nose is getting some of that highlight, I have to imagine her forehead is also going to get some light too. You'll try. Don't say you'll try. You have to fix those eyebrows. Give them justice. We are past the era of tattoo eyebrows, so we leave that in the 2000s, and we leave that for the Korean ajumas. Okay, so for the lighting, let's see. So up top. Okay. All right. This is how your lighting is. All right, so we gotta give just a little bit more light around here and the top of the head here a little bit. And I'll pretend there's a little bit of that bounce light. Really subtly. And then for her hair, I would say for any type of hair, you do want to simplify it a little bit. I think it's looking too nuanced. And that's why it looks really jaggedy, very shaggy, rather than like hair. So simplify the shadow, make it a little bit more cohesive. So maybe this right here is one piece of shadow right here. On how to paint faces, I would recommend Istabrak and her whole tutorial on the 14-day challenge. You don't have to do the 14-day challenge, but it's like a very useful kind of drawing activity challenge where it forces you to be able to learn how to paint a face, like a realistic face, within 14 days. So you do one face a day for 14 days. And you try to learn like the basic standards of like what are the ways that you create soft edges, hard edges, what are the landmarks that are going to get hit with that light, that kind of stuff. And I feel like I improved a lot from just watching her videos where she critiques people on the 14-day challenge, even if you don't do it yourself, just because she goes into a lot of detail about like, okay, so you need to make sure that you keep the edges around the jaw. Oh, if I did one, I don't think I've done a face tutorial, but if you petition hard enough, maybe next month could be a face tutorial. So work hard, Jessie. This Discord is waiting for your petitioning. Misu so far has not been successful with that foot tutorial. So I would say a face tutorial is pretty packed on its own because there's so many features on the face that you have to pay attention to. So it may even end up being like, you know, a part 1, part 2 kind of thing. Her eye is too short on this side. I'm gonna bring it out a little bit more. You'll try to petition. Greta successfully petitioned, so no excuses. I think it's totally possible. Okay. I don't know, something like that, I guess. So her hair feels a little bit more believable. So simplify shadows. Don't get too caught up, and then make sure her neck is a little bit darker in general because her hair is hiding a lot of her, like, her skin. So that's why it's gonna be a little bit darker. And then just real quickly, we're going to talk about the shadow of these objects. We're pretending it's casting a shadow. Her figure is casting a shadow on these objects. So obviously they also got to get some of that shadow color. Multiply. Real quick. You can do it real quickly using multiply, which is kind of cheap, but maybe I'll push this slightly more towards the greens. Okay. It's supposed to be mochi. Green tea mochi, that kind of thing. That's fine and all, but you still gotta consider the shadows, man. No neglecting your shadows. Okay, so spoon's also gonna get a little bit of shadow. And so you'll see how this compared to before. Okay, so the shadow a little bit more believable. And so those are basically the changes I would make for this piece. As you go forward, I added this kind of bar of window right here so you get that extra sense of light source. You don't have to do it, but it does help you break up the shape a little bit better. You might even consider to add a little bit more greens into the picture. Add a plant right here or something, I don't know. Because we do want to, you know, unify this green so it's not just there. Because when you just have one single spot of green, it feels very out of place. See how that green helps you tie together the piece a little bit better? Yours isn't gross, it's just a work in progress, okay? Like I said, it's like this right here, you have to pay attention to how dull some of the colors are. So I would always warn against using too much gray gray and color is both on like the same spectrum of gotta be cautious about how much you use it, or else it's gonna make the piece look very muddy. And so I will keep this PSD and I'll send it to you guys too. So I think that would be all for today, since we only have 2 people to be actually critiqued, and I don't think Misu is actually here, so even if I do potentially critique his charcoal stuff. So I have more stuff to say about this one. I don't know if he'll watch this back, but basically when you are working with like charcoal in real life, I don't know how he did this part, but usually you want to not use an eraser to erase away like this. Either get one of those hard rubber erasers that look kind of like your classic pink eraser, and you're gonna use the side of it, so like this flat side, and you're gonna erase it like this, rather than using your gummy eraser, which let me see if I can find one. So, little traditional art lesson. So this is your gummy eraser. You can use it to mold it, and you can make it into a tiny little piece so you can kind of erase away a little bit. It's helpful for when you want to pick up like really concentrated charcoal in one area, but it won't help you get that really clean white paper look unless you have one of these, which is your pink eraser. And you see how dirty mine is? It's because I've been using it to erase away areas and make it super easy. And then another tool I would suggest you might want to get is one of these. It's sort of like a really concentrated roll of paper formed into a pencil, and it helps you kind of blend out target areas of your charcoal better. But in terms of like the shadow, light, and form of this cube, I think it's looking pretty good. I can totally tell that this is, you know, the bright part, your shadow part, a little bit of that bounce light. I may think that the shadow should be poking out this way, but I'm sure he had a reference, so maybe that's why it looks like this. I would also suggest just a little bit of blurred shadow right here to make the cube feel like it's sitting down on the floor. And so that will be it for the critique session. Just before this, I was working on our tutorial on complex poses, and a little sneak peek of when I finish editing the video, this is what the time lapse will be for the piece that we did for this month. It's a little bit of Spider-Man fan art, some more, but also talking about how we figure out how to do complex poses, you know? So poses like this one, or where is it? Where the heck did I put it? Or this one, or even like, yeah, nice poses. They're very interesting. I feel like I try to choose some poses that were a little bit less easy to figure out if you are trying to figure out how to draw some more dynamic poses. Like this is a very cool pose, but it's definitely very challenging for a beginner to figure out where to start. So I'll try to get that edited by this weekend. And then I'll be posting that tutorial up potentially by Monday. And that'll be it. Okay, so I will send you guys the PSDs via Patreon and a Google Link Drive. And then if you have any questions or anything, just feel free to message me back. Okay. Have a good night, y'all.